The ushers come forward this morning. Dear God, we do just thank you for allowing us once again to meet in this place. And our sole purpose is to worship you this morning, to hear from you. And we just want to invite you to speak to our hearts this morning. And we ask you would use these gifts that we give back to you. Use them for your glory. And just help us to be a group of people, a church that is about your business. And everything that we do. And we just want to give you glory this morning for who you are. We give these things in the name of Christ. Amen. Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe, we live for you. kiddos, you can head downstairs. And not kiddos, you can have a seat as we continue this morning.
Feet and a light.
hearts will cry, these tongues will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these tongues will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these tongues will sing. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you.
Pray together. Father, we thank you that we can come into this place and we can worship you. We pour out our praise to you. Father, there's so many examples of things just even this past week where we can just pause and say, wow, God, you're amazing. And we just shout your praise because of who you are. Not just because of what you've done for us, but because of who you are. Would you speak to us through your word this morning? And we may just learn from you and grow closer to you. In your name we pray. Amen. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. I gotta know, Brian, how do you pick out your songs?
Sometimes it's like intentional, and sometimes it's just like it falls together. So
Just falls
I don't have like a method really.
You don't have like a camera in my office, like looking at my notes. I tell you, it's kind of scary sometimes to, well, not scary, but amazing to sit there and go, wow. We're going to talk about trust this morning. And so it's like, whoa, that's pretty cool. And come to the altar, we're going to end with prayer. And so you can see the prayer sheet in your bulletin, and we're going to finish with that this morning. And so don't get rid of those, but we're using those. Two quick announcements. You can see these things are in your bulletin. Wanted to pull these up before you. By the way, thanks, Stephanie, for jumping in back there. So she jumped in, trained her on the computer in about 5 minutes this morning. So, she's right there ready to go. And so she's got to like stop being around in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like, hey, Stephanie, what you doing? So appreciate that. But these two announcements, the Joy Fellowship, there's a couple outings coming up. And so that's for, we say it's just older youth. So there's really no age limit on that. But if you see something you'd like to be part of, then have a good time. A lot of things coming up. And so I talked to Jan and Paul Clevenger if you have information about that. The other one is the event, Breathe event is a women's event, a nice night to get away and just breathe, right? Because life is hectic and crazy, right, moms? And so it's a chance just to get away. I think they're making a wreath this time, but you do need to sign up and pay in advance. And so make sure you read about that as a deadline is coming up for that. Well, this morning we're going to talk about trust, and I'm going to take you on just kind of an interesting journey. You can tell that I did not, by this sermon, you can tell I did not go to seminary, because in seminary they teach you that you have to have a 3-point sermon. And I don't have that this morning. God has led in quite a journey, and it's actually pretty exciting. At least it was exciting for me, and so I want to take you on that this morning. And so maybe you're kind of leery about the whole trust thing, aren't you? You're like, can I get out now? Okay, block the door back there, Medora, don't let it go. But it's hard to trust other people, isn't it? Like, sometimes it's like, I think of most of it as like driving, right? It kind of scares me, right, to think about when someone else is driving. It's like, you really trust that other person. And so it takes a little bit of trust. Or making important, like, medical decisions, right? You kind of want to, do you trust your doctor or not? Or your financial decisions of, important jobs. You hand off something. I know in my job, I hand off responsibilities to other people, and it's like, okay, I hope they know what they're doing. I kind of have faith that they're going to do the job that we need to get done. But it's sometimes hard to trust other people. This morning I thought I saw this illustration done many, many years ago, probably 20 years ago. So I think I know what I'm doing, because it was 20 years ago, right? So I asked Connor to come and be a helper for me. So come here, Connor. Connor is a 6th grader, and so, man, I had to pick someone smaller than me. That was close. Okay, so Connor, we're going to do a trust fall this morning. Okay? Have you ever done a trust fall?
I've seen trust falls before.
You've seen it, so you kind of got the idea. Okay. Has anybody done a trust fall? Have you ever done one of those where they put you on a platform like 5 feet in the air? No? That's pretty cool, isn't it? Okay. All right, and so it's like, basically, he's going to stand here. You're going to cross your arms in front of you. Yeah, you're going to face that way. I think you can keep your eyes open. And you can wave at these people. They might be the last people you see. Okay, so don't fall yet. Don't tell it. Okay, we have a job to do. Okay, so I'm going to say, Connor, do you trust me? And you say, yeah, I do, or trust, sure, or maybe. Okay, and then the congregation, you guys have a job. You have to count down from 3. So we'll do 3, 2, 1, fall. Okay, so let's try that. 3,
2, 1.
Okay. I'm testing that. Okay. He is very trusting. Okay. Man, that's awesome. Okay. But you have to trust. You have to be stiff, right? Okay. Okay. So don't try to sit down because that doesn't work. Okay. So we're gonna practice this. All right. Connor, do you trust me?
Yes.
Congregation.
3, 2, 1,
fall. All right. Yeah. There we go. We got that. Okay. Stay right there. Keep looking that way. You can't look at me. Okay. All right. Because you trust me. Right. Okay. All right. Okay. So I was thinking this week about trust and confidence, okay? And, I'm a very trusting person. I went, I was at a thing at the school the other day for one of my girls, and this pastor got up and started speaking, and he said, take out your phones and text me Genesis 1:1. And, everybody gets out their phone, and I'm going, what's he doing? What's he doing? And I'm like, I'm not going to text him. I'm like, he's a pastor. I mean, can pastors have our phone numbers, it's kind of scary. And so, it's kind of like, I don't know, I kind of missed that. Okay. Connor, you still doing okay over there?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Connor, do you trust me?
Yes.
3, 2, 1.
Oh, you didn't quite trust me. Oh, that's all right. That's scary. Okay. All right. Okay. Got it? You're good. Okay. Stay right there, okay? Keep looking that way, okay? Wait a minute. There's people over there. Some of them are scared. Pick out a really friendly face. Okay. So, more confidence. Sometimes I'm just not very, very confident, okay? I'm going to turn it on for a second so can you hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, so I was thinking about my brother and I are very different people. I mean, he's like 6'3", very fit, kind of a very big basketball player, dark hair, blue eyes. He only has 4 kids, such a slacker. But he's always had this kind of confidence in not only in himself but in me. And like I was thinking, like he was in high school. Does this make you nervous over here? I haven't left you, Connor, okay? I'm good? You still over there? Okay, keep looking over that way, okay. And so my brother has this confidence. He would tell his friends that I should be playing Division I baseball when I was in college. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, I didn't even make the all-star team. And so he just had this confidence in me that sometimes I just didn't know if I had in myself. But Connor, you have trust in me, right?
Yeah.
All right, congregation.
3, 2, 1.
Fall.
That was awesome.
Connor, did you trust me?
Yeah.
A little bit. It's kind of scary. He was letting me really fall. That's awesome. Yeah. So, why did you trust me?
Because you said that your father had confidence in me and I would make the team.
Okay.
Football team.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had confidence that you could catch me.
Okay.
Score.
Yeah. Yeah. Was it scary a little bit?
No.
No? Okay. I was a little nervous. I mean, But trust takes confidence in someone else, doesn't it? You kind of just say, hey, I'm gonna trust you. It might not seem logical. It might be difficult. We don't always know the outcome when we let someone else have control. And so I talked to you about a little bit where we're going on this journey. We're going to start in 1 Kings if you want to start heading. But this journey, it was just kind of weird because I started reading and I did a devotional Monday morning and I was reading this devotional and it talked about trust and like the idea that a lot of times we'll trust God with ourselves, right? We'll say, God, what should I do in this circumstance? Or, you got me, God. But then we take it to that next level of, do we trust God with other things, with other circumstances? And I got to thinking about my kids, and I think, okay, yeah, I think I trust God with my kids, but yet, man, that's scary. My oldest is 16, junior in high school, and she started getting college mail. You know, every day I'm getting another piece of mail. I'm throwing it away so she doesn't see it. And her trash can's like full of it. And it's like, man, you know, that kind of scares me to think about where's she going to go next, and letting go in that stage, and the driving and all that stuff. And then if that wasn't enough, my freshman got college mail the other day too. And I'm like, no, I'm not ready for that. But it's the whole idea like, God, you know, God saying, hey, do you trust me? We have confidence in what God has, not only for us, but for our kids, for our grandkids, for our neighbors. And so I was reading this devotion and kind of thinking, all right, is this something for me? And I came across 1 Kings chapter 17. And I was kind of reading through it, and I was kind of looking at this going, hey, yeah, that's good stuff. And I'm like, God, are you trying to teach me something here? And then, so I started studying it and praying more, and I wrote down other thoughts that weren't just for me. I thought, this is for somebody else. We need confidence. Maybe there's somebody here today that just needs that reminder, that touch from God, just saying, hey, I got this. I have a poster, or not a poster, but a plaque in my office. My parents made it for me many years ago. And it has a picture of it's supposed to be Jesus with his hands stretched out. And it says, Brent, trust me, I have everything in my hands. Trust me, I have everything in my hands. And so I was like, man, this is good. And then a couple other ideas came to mind, and I'm like, maybe this isn't just for me, but it might be for Sunday too, for you guys. And so as I started reading this week, I came across 1 Kings chapter 17, and I got into that, and then I bounced into other scriptures. And I was like getting excited, going, this is really cool stuff. And I got done reading, and I looked back and I said, okay, so now what? You know, this is really cool. And I kind of thought, you know, I think I need to just take you on the journey that I went on. And it's not point by point kind of stuff. In fact, maybe on the back of your bulletin, you can write down some of these scriptures and study them even more throughout this week. We're not going to go into every detail of these stories, but we're going to bounce around a little bit. So we're going to start in 1 Kings chapter 17. And it's just interesting what God is doing in Elijah's life. And so if you look there right at the beginning of the chapter, there's a drought coming in the land, and so he's by a brook, and God said, hey, I'm gonna take care of you. And Elijah's like, all right. And so he's drinking from the brook, and God sends ravens to feed him. They bring him meat. I don't know about you, I've never had a bird bring me anything except for they drop stuff on my car, my head, and my shirt. It's not a fun, grace, right? But God has amazing methods to deliver his plans. You continue on in chapter 17, verse 7 there, that he meets this woman. The brook dries up, so he goes into town. God says, hey, go into town. I'm going to take care of you. I've instructed someone to take care of you, take care of your needs, your food and water. So he meets a woman, and he says, hey, can you give me a drink? While you're getting a drink, can you give me one? She's like, sure. And then he says, do you have any food? Could you give me some food? And the woman's like, well, actually, I got some flour and oil, and it's all gone. It's running out. So it's going to be my last meal. I'm planning on making a small cake for me and my son, and we're going to die. This is our last meal. And Elijah says to this woman, and from what I understand, or what I've read, she doesn't know who he is. She doesn't know he's a prophet. She's just like, all right, And she's like, all right. But he says, God told me that this flour and your oil is not going to run out until the drought is done. You're going to be taken care of. And so she goes and makes this cake and shares it with Elijah. And God continues to meet their needs and meet their needs and meet their needs. And then the son of this woman gets sick and dies. And she kind of comes to Elijah and says, hey, wait a minute here. You did this, God did this amazing thing in our life, and now he's dead. And what was the point? Why have God take care of us? Why have God feed us? And I got to thinking, do you ever get in those situations where God calls you to something, or God says, hey, why don't you go try to do this? And you think, yeah, I can do this. And then it gets hard and heartbreaking, and detours come along the way. And we start going, man, God, are you sure? It'd be like, what's going on? I don't get it. Elijah takes the boy to the room and he prays over him, lays himself out on him 3 times, and God heals him. Amazing story of faith, of confidence, of trust, not only in God, but God's messenger. And I think, wow, that's an amazing story. Not one we read about a lot, especially in today, do we? So I was reading through that, and somehow I got directed to 2 Chronicles chapter 20. 2 Chronicles chapter 20, kind of to the right a few pages, and we read about the story of King Jehoshaphat. He's the son of David. And we read in 2 Chronicles chapter 20 that a vast army is come upon Judah and Jehoshaphat. And they're not trained warriors. They don't have great battle lines and everything, know exactly what to do militarily. And so they're kind of scared. There's this massive, huge army is coming upon them. They're just around the corner. And it's like reading this story, it's like, wow, check out what God does. In fact, we're going to read a couple of the verses here. We'll put that up on the screen. Starting in verse 3. We'll read the situation and then their response and their prayer and then God's response. So verse 3. 2 Chronicles 20, verse 3. Alarmed, I'll read it, you can follow along. Alarmed, Jehoshaphat resolved to inquire of the Lord, and he proclaimed a fast for all of Judah. The people of Judah came together to seek help from the Lord. Indeed, they came from every town in Judah to seek him. Isn't that kind of amazing? We do that, right? This something comes up in front of us, and we call our friends and say, would you pray for us? They're going to inquire of the Lord, God, what's going on? What do we do in this situation? That's their situation. The armies have come together to destroy them. They're around the corner, and they're coming. And so they're alarmed. They're like panic mode, right? Like, what do we do? So they go to the Lord. Listen to Jehoshaphat's prayer. He stood up in the assembly of Judah, verse 5, in Jerusalem at the temple of the Lord, in front of the new courtyard, and he says this, O Lord, God of our fathers, are you not the God who is in heaven? You rule over all the kingdoms of the nations. Power and might are in your hand, and no one can withstand you. O our God, did you not drive out the inhabitants of this land before your people, before Israel, and give it forever to the descendants of Abraham, your friend? It's what God has done in the past, right? Taking care of them. They're praising him for that. Verse 8, they have lived in it and have built it a sanctuary for your name, saying, if calamity comes upon us, whether a sword of judgment or plague or famine, we will stand in your presence before this temple that bears your name, and we will cry out to you in our distress, and you will hear us, and you will save us. Look at that confidence in God. They're saying, hey, God, we're going to come to you. You've been there for us in the past. If something comes up, we're going to come to you again, and you're going to save us. We trust you. And so he tells God what's going on again. But now here are men from Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir, whose territory you would not allow Israel to invade when they came from Egypt. So they turned away from them and then did not destroy them. See how they are repaying us by coming to drive us out of the possession you gave us as an inheritance? So if you kind of catch that, when Israel came in to take the land, God said, don't mess with them. So they didn't. They stayed back. And now this land is coming after them. Verse 12. O God, will you not judge them? For we have no power to face this vast army that is attacking us. We do not know what to do, but our eyes are upon you. You ever been in a situation like that? Saying, God, there's a mountain in front of me. I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should go this way or that way. If I should talk to this person or that person. Or what do I do? I don't know. But my eyes are on you. Verse 13, just kind of give you this cool picture. The church comes together. All the men of Judah with their wives and children and little ones stood there before the Lord. They waited. Verse 15 is God's response. Listen, King Jehoshaphat, and all who live in Judah and Jerusalem. This is what the Lord says. Do not be afraid or discouraged because of this vast army, for the battle is not yours, but God's. The battle is not ours, but God's. I think so many times in our lives we get there and we say, hey, God, what do we do? There's So many situations. God, what do? We get in that panic mode. Ever get in that? I'm not the only one, right? Get in the panic mode of, what do I do? I don't know what to do. We follow the example of them. There with the people of Judah, Jerusalem, and say, hey, God, we don't know what to do, but our eyes are upon you. My journey continued into the book of Habakkuk, however you say that. One of the minor prophets. If you kind of go towards Matthew and go left a little bit, you can find Habakkuk. Small book. And I came across the verse in chapter 2. It says, I will stand at watch and station myself on the ramparts, the watchtower. And I will look to see what God will say to me and what answer I am to give to this complaint. And so I get this idea that Habakkuk is the prophet. He's kind of withdrawing from a situation to kind of get away physically and spiritually to connect with God, because God apparently sent a promise. And so he's like, all right, I'm gonna get back and I'm gonna watch this. I'm gonna see what's gonna happen. I'm up at a high spot where I can connect with God and I can see what God's gonna do. And so I was kind of like looking at that and I'm like, well, that's cool, but what's the context? Like what? I was kind of curious. So I was like, well, let's read. And so if you go back into chapter 1, it's this conversation. The whole book is a conversation between God and Habakkuk. And it's kind of interesting because I think the humanness of Habakkuk really shows up because he's complaining. He's saying, hey, God, what's going on? We live in this world that's a mess. The country and what the people are doing is just evil and it's wrong. It's like, hey, hello, God, are you seeing this? Are you seeing what I'm seeing? You ever do that with God? Hey, God, do you see these people? Can you just like zap them or something? Right? And we get that idea. And so look at Habakkuk 1:2. Chapter 1, verse 2. He says, this is his complaint. How long, O Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen? Or I cry out to you, violence, but you don't save. Why do you make me look at all this injustice? Why do you tolerate the wrong? Destruction and violence are before me. There is strife and conflict abounding. Therefore, the law is paralyzed, and justice never prevails. The wicked hem in the righteous, so that justice is perverted. Kind of sounds like our world today, doesn't it? Like, hey, God, hello, do you see? Really? Why are you letting this happen? So this is his complaint to God. And God answers him. And it's kind of fun. I just love, I can just kind of hear some of what God's doing. He's like, hey, I'm going to do something really cool, really amazing. Just wait and see. Right? Just wait and see. You get that wait. You ever get that wait answer? Like, just wait. It's like, I got to wait. Do it now. I want to see. And so God reveals his plan to Habakkuk. And his plan is so the country, the area is being evil, right? And so God is going to use Babylon to come into Judah and deal with the problem. And so you think like, hey, that's a great idea, God. And Habakkuk's like, wait a minute, what are you thinking? They're worse than we are. And yet, that's how you're going to fix this? That's kind of a weird plan. It doesn't make sense. And so he goes again, he complains to God and said, all right, I'm going to see this, but man, this is really weird. And God comes back and says, well, trust me in this. He's like, write down this revelation. This is the way it's going to happen. And he talks about 5 sins that are happening within the area. And that idea of like, we need to get rid of the sin in our lives, or destruction is going to come upon us. It kind of keeps us from God. And then that kind of light bulb idea, I think that light bulb goes up in Habakkuk's mind. And he's like, oh, I get it. You're right. You're God. I'm not. You're the one on the throne. You're the one that knows and sees the whole plan. I get it. I'm going to listen to you and I'm going to praise you. You're God and I'm not. You have things in your hands. My journey continued into the New Testament. Several New Testament stories kind of came to my mind, and I was thinking about when Jesus was on the boat with the disciples and the storm came up, right? And they're in the boat and the disciples are just kind of, again, in panic mode. God, hello, you're going to wake up. What's going on? And he's kind of, like, hello, do you care about us? And Jesus wakes up and says, calms the storm just by his words. I think that gets the attention of the disciples. Yeah. You're right, okay. You ever go through those times when you're crying out to God, you're in that panic mode, God, hello, do you see me? I'm very scared, I don't know what to do. I'm dealing with this health situation, or my family's going through this. And God, do you hear me? It's like, yep, I got you. I got you. You're in my hands. So you get through that and you're like, oh yeah, he had that. What was I thinking? Why did I worry? Why did I not trust him? This verse in John chapter 16 that's up there, just that reminder, God doesn't say if you go through something, if you have a trouble. He says, you're going to go through trouble. You're going to go through hard times. So don't try not to sugarcoat things, right? That we become Christians and follow after him and everything's going to be just easy, smooth sailing. No, he says, you're going to have troubles. People aren't going to like you. You're going to have ups and downs in life. You're going to go through the rocky times. The wind and the waves are going to rock you a little bit. And they're going to bounce you around. But don't worry, I'm going to be there. Take heart. In this world, you will have trouble. But take heart. I have overcome the world. Just that reminder of where our future lies, right? God has overcome it. These struggles and the things that we go through are temporary. And look to our future home in heaven. I thought my journey was done at that point, and then God reminded me of some other scriptures. Psalm chapter 37 came to my mind, and it's just that whole idea, speaking of trust. I'm going to read this to you. Psalm of David. I didn't take the time to see which exact trouble that David was going through at this time. But we know David's life and his ups and downs and how people were after him, and he wore his emotions on his sleeve, didn't he? And he cried out to God and shared with God his heart. So, God, this is what I'm dealing with. And he spoke openly with God. But Psalm 37, he says this, do not fret because of evil men, or be envious of those who do wrong. For like the grass, they will soon wither, and like green plants, they will soon die away. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy safe pastures. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Keep connecting with him. Keep going to him. Trust in him. Continue to do good. Be who he has called you to be. Focus on him, not the problems. Verse 5, he says, commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will do this. He will make your righteousness shine like the dawn, the justice of your cause like the noonday sun. That idea that righteousness shining, like when you're doing the right things, when you're connecting with God, other people are going to see that. And that's going to shine bright. That's going to be a witness for all to see. How do we deal with the struggles and the hardships in our life? It says a lot about who we are. Verse 7, I like to skip over verse 7. Does anybody like to skip over verse 7? Because he says, be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. I'm not very patient. Trying to get out the door with our kids or something like, come on, hurry up, let's go, get the shoes on, we gotta hurry. And that idea of like, there's something to learn in the waiting, in the patience. And it can grow, we can be stronger as we go through those times. Refrain from anger and turn from wrath. Do not fret. It only leads to evil. Try not to get angry while we wait for the answer. When we get impatient, right? Sometimes that anger kind of swells up in our lives and we say, hey, I'm tired of dealing with this. I'm frustrated, God. Why aren't you answering? Why am I waiting? So I've been there. I've been in those situations. You've been there too. Next on my journey, I was directed to Hebrews chapter 11. And we often refer to this as the hall of faith. And looking at those examples of how people hung on in the hard times. They did the not normal thing that God called them to do. God kind of challenges us, doesn't he? Sometimes his path seems really weird, really odd, really different. Like, I don't get this, but it worked out. And these people did that. They lived it. They said, all right, God, you're in charge. I'm in your hands. I'll trust you. And they followed through with it. And I started thinking, like, how do we get on that hall of faith? Hall of faith. Like, I want to be like that. I want to have that kind of faith. Not for the recognition and, ooh, I got my name on a plaque or something, right? And you don't want that either. You want that. But how do we do that? How do we survive the hard times? Of course, my Bible is open, and chapter 11 is on the same page as chapter 10. So I'm looking there, and it says a call to persevere. I think, that sounds interesting. I should read that, right? We are called to persevere, which leads to holding on to our faith, right? Listen to this section, verses 19 through 38, 39 are kind of divided into three sections. And the first section in chapter 10 is this idea of drawing closer to God. And the writer even talks about, says that since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus. Okay, he's talking, if you remember right, when Jesus died on the cross, there was a curtain separating the Holy of Holies. And that curtain was torn in two so we could, people, all of us, could enter into the Holy of Holies. We could enter in to meet with God and not fear of death. We could have communion with him. We can talk with him. He would listen to us. And so that was a big change. So the writer's saying, hey, draw close to God. And he lists ways to do it. Verse 21, since we have a great high priest over the house of God, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart, in full assurance, having confidence, trust, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from guilty conscience, right? Cleaning the sin off, having our bodies washed with pure water, good cleaning. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. That history, right? The reminder of, Connor knew the way I was going to catch him, right? We know God has brought us through other things. That history, taking care of us. Let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds. Have you ever been in one of those situations where you're facing a mountain, you're in a storm, you're in a crisis, you're in panic mode, and someone comes along and gives you a hug or calls you up and says, hey, I'm going to pray for you. I want to be there for you. I know that what you're going through, and I'm just here for you. How encouraging that is. It's our job, right, to encourage each other. Let us not give up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but let us encourage one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. So that first section says we got to draw close to God. You're in a crisis. We got to draw close to him. That's how you hang on to your faith. The second section, and we kind of talked about it there in the first as well, but the idea of getting rid of all sin. Don't deliberately, don't purposely keep sinning, but say, hey, I got a sin in my life. Deal with it, get done with it, put it in the past, and move on. Don't let that sin keep coming into your life. That will wreck our perseverance. That will wreck our faith if we hang on to sins. And then the third part, it kind of repeats kind of throughout in there, is that remember what God has done on this journey. I think the people listed in Hebrews chapter 11, and I think the people we talked about all said, hey, you know what? God has done this before. He's going to do it again. He's going to take care of us. In fact, we could look at the whole Bible. I think there's so many examples in here. There's so many examples we haven't touched on of like, oh, what about Moses? What about Abraham? What about, there's so many places where we can look and say, you know what, God, he kind of knows what he's doing, doesn't he? I like to put in my orders because, I think I know a lot and I'm kind of bossy at times. And it's like, I think he just looks at me like, what are you doing? This isn't what, you might want that, but that's not what you need. This is what you need. And so, kind of coming together there. I think there was two purposes when I started on this journey. I think, first of all, the purpose was that just challenging myself that I need to trust him more. Be reminded of what he's done, the miraculous ways, amazing ways that he works. And that idea of like, okay, God, I need to trust you with everything in my life. Whatever that next step is in my life, whatever may come down the road, whatever's going on in my family, or whatever's, I just need to trust him more. I need to stay out of the panic mode, right? Because the panic mode is not a great place to be. Other than it draws you closer to God, right? When you're in panic mode, it's quicker to go to your knees and be in front of God, aren't you? At least I am. But then secondly, I thought, maybe we need to trust him as a church together better. I want to give just a little encouragement today. Because as I was writing down notes and really that first initial thought, my thoughts went to our church and what we're going through as a family. Many of you know, it's not a secret, but Pastor Mark has announced his retirement, and we're in that transition period of what's going next. And that can be a scary time, can't it? He's been here 22 years or more. I don't know the exact timeline. We go to love him and care for him and know the way he does things. And so it might cause a little bit of concern or a little bit of just like, what's going on? But I think as a church, we need to remember that we are in God's hands. We are going to be taken care of. God knows what's going on. He's not surprised in all this. And so I think just kind of three things came to my mind that we should be doing as a family, as a church family. We need to be praying. We need to remember to stay and remember to go and be ready to go. I know that sounds kind of funny. Stay and go, right? In the same sentence. Right? Let me explain that a little bit. God has in his hands. He's not surprised by this, but yet we need to seek his direction. We need to be coming before the Lord. I know our elders and deacons have been doing that. They've talked about, okay, where do we go from here? How do we take care of Pastor Mark? Because he's still part of our family. We're going to love him and care for him. And so he's going through a lot as well. And so we'll be praying for him especially too. But we need to seek his direction. I called a former superintendent of our district and friends with him. And I said, Dale, here's the situation. This is what's going on. And he's like, all right, I got 3 pieces of advice. He said, pray, and pray. And so then I called our superintendent now, or director, and I said, Jeff, I was like, you know the situation. You talked with Mark. What suggestions do you have? He said, pray like crazy. Pray like crazy. The elders have started a kind of a prayer team of, hey, we're going to pray for this transition. We're going to seek God's face. That whole idea of Jehoshaphat. It's like, hey, God, we don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. That's what the leadership of this church wants to do. We're going to pray because our eyes are on you, God. Tell us where to go. Secondly, I want to challenge you to stay. It may be kind of like, okay, where is this going to go? What's the next thing going to be like? Might be like, okay, I'm jumping ship. It's rocky here. I'm jumping out. We need to come together. We need to be there for each other. Remember in Hebrews chapter 10, it talked about caring for one another. Don't give up meeting together. Encourage one another. Spur one another on towards love and good deeds. We're going through this together. It's a team effort. And then I think we should pray for confidence or courage. Courage to go. We've been praying and seeking God's face. God, what do you want? What do you want? Where do you want? Our eyes are on you. We have the courage that says, when I say go, when it's ready, we've done the research, we've done what we need to do, and he points us in a direction we need to go after it. Sometimes that's scary. God says do this, and you're like, are you sure, God? That's not what I was expecting. But we need to trust in his guidance and trust in prayer. This may seem odd to you, and it probably is, but this is where God took me. As I was reading Exodus 17 and caring and thinking about how do I encourage our people? How do I encourage the church? I thought about the Buckeyes. So I'm very spiritual like that. But I was thinking about the 2014 year. 2013, our great quarterback got hurt right at the end of the season. We were kind of forced to take our freshman quarterback. And we were like, oh great, what's going to happen in 2014? He became a Heisman candidate, right? Heisman candidate's one of the best players, considered the best player in college football. Led our team on did a fantastic job. Going to the last game of the season, he gets hurt. So here we are going into the Big Ten championship with a third-string quarterback. Unproven, untested, very new to the game. And our team follows him and wins the national championship. I know you're all watching, like, woo, I know that, I was there, right? And I thought about, man, that's our situation, isn't it? We had an amazing team around our quarterback. It wasn't just the quarterback. We had a great team of coaches on the sidelines, spurring that team on. We had fans that were encouraging and showing support. We showed up and yelled and screamed and said, we got this. That's where our church is, right? We got an awesome team. We got elders and deacons who love the Lord. You guys love the Lord. You're cheering on. We got teams, we got coaches there to help us. We got God on our sidelines saying, hey, I got this. We can go and do this. We don't know what is next. We don't know when, how long Pastor Mark is. We're all figuring all that stuff out, timing and things like that. We can have confidence that we know that we are in God's hands. And he's going to lead us and direct us. We need to have the confidence to go. It may be difficult. It might not work out the way we want. It may lead us into something just totally different and amazing that God has for us. But I think just like the examples that we looked at with Habakkuk, we trust as Habakkuk did. We trust as we did with the disciples, as they're going, whoa, I get it, I see the other side. As King Jehoshaphat and the other people did, as Elijah did, along with the woman and her son, and the trust that they had, the confidence they had in what God was going to do. God says, trust me. I have everything in my hands. We can do this together. We have a great history of a church here, amazing things that God has done. And we look back and say, wow, look what God has done in this church. Proud to be part of this place, part of this family. We're going to close this way today, and Brian and the team's going to come back. And I want to take some time, and whether you're going to sing or just listen, I want you to take time to pray in three ways, three areas.